Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to break down the Week 6 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. We're going to go position by position, talk about the players that I like most for this Week 6 slate. Obviously, we're not going to touch on every single player. I don't want this video to be too long. I'm going to try and keep it condensed to around like 25-30 minutes. So really, I'm just going to touch on the guys I have the most interest in at each position. We'll talk about Draftkings pricing, hit on some guys I like over there. We'll talk about Yahoo as well, and we'll talk about guys I like on Yahoo too. Just before we do get started though, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. Hit the subscribe button as well if you are new to the channel. I do upload a ton of NFL content. Didn't get up a first look video for this week. I normally do make first look videos for the main slate, but because salaries got released so late, didn't get a first look video up. But I still upload my full video breakdown, my full breakdowns on Friday. I get videos up for the showdown slates as well, for the Thursday night games, for the Monday night games. We didn't have a Thursday night game this week, so haven't gotten up as many videos this week, but normally, anywhere from 4 to 5 videos a week I'm posting for NFL. So hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell as well, so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these YouTube videos, and if they do help you, I do have more content available on Patreon. You can check that out, link down below in the description if you are interested. Obviously, it's optional, but for those of you that do want to get more content from me, you can see all that I do have to offer over on Patreon, link down below in the description. But let's go ahead and take a look at this slate. We'll start off at quarterback. So quarterback this week is pretty interesting. We have a situation where a lot of the big name guys that we've kind of been paying up for are not on the main slate. So like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they play Monday night. Kyler Murray plays Monday night. The Seahawks are on a bye, so we don't have Russell Wilson. So like those 4 guys not on the main slate, those are 4 of the top fantasy QBs just so far this season. So we have a situation where our only guys over 7K are Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, and Deshaun Watson. I think this week, for me at least, I think if I'm going to be paying up at quarterback, I'm just going to pay all the way to the top for Lamar. I know Lamar hasn't been good so far this season. He's not running as much either, which is obviously, not good for his fantasy value. Only had 2 rushing attempts last week for 3 yards. I mean, normally that is something we don't see from Lamar. Like, normally he gives you at least 40, 50 rushing yards even. That's like his floor. Only had 3 rushing yards last week, just ran the ball twice. I mean, I would not expect that to be the norm. I think, we're going to see Lamar get 8 to 10 carries a week. 40, 50 rushing yards is pretty much his floor. He obviously can throw for, 200, 250 yards. This is still one of the highest upside QBs in the league, in my opinion, at least for fantasy. We saw all the massive games that Lamar had last year, multiple games over 30 Draftkings points. There's still big-time upside for Lamar. If I'm going to pay up at quarterback this week, especially because we don't have, some of those other big-name guys, no Mahomes, no Josh Allen, no Kyler Murray, no Russell Wilson. I think Lamar is clearly the top QB on this slate. It's just a matter of if you can fit him in or not. It's kind of tough to do so on DraftKings. We don't have a ton of great punt value on DraftKings, and there are some cheaper quarterbacks I like that we'll talk about in a second. But hitting on Yahoo pricing, I pretty much always say this. If you do play on Yahoo, you kind of know this already. Yahoo's pricing is pretty soft. You can kind of just play whoever you want. They don't really do a good job of pricing guys up. As we'll discuss when we get to running back, Alexander Madison, he's close to minimum salary. He's going to be an absolute lock this week. It's so much easier to pay up at quarterback. And when you look at the pricing here, like Jackson's not even the most expensive, or he's tied for the most expensive. Same price as Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers. So, definitely give me Lamar Jackson on Yahoo. Really like him over there. Very easy to fit him in. Going to be my top QB. He's my top QB overall, but it's a little bit tougher to get to him on DraftKings. And because, we'll talk about some guys I like that are close to $2,000 cheaper that give you plenty of upside as well. But yeah, if I'm paying up this week, Lamar Jackson's my favorite guy. I do prefer him over Aaron Rodgers and, Deshaun Watson. Even though Jackson's been bad, we're eventually going to see him put up, a 30, 35-point game. He's going to have one of those games where he throws for 250 yards, gets 80 rushing yards, has a rushing touchdown, and just puts up a massive game. So really like Lamar. Then in the 6K range, there's not a ton of options that I'm in love with here. I think at 6,500, Cam Newton's a guy that I do have interest in against Denver. Hasn't played since week 3, I believe. The Patriots had their games postponed. Cam got COVID, so he hasn't played since week 3. So maybe that's somewhat of a concern. This is his first game back since testing positive for COVID. I don't think I'd be too worried about that though. I'd still have a lot of interest in Cam at 6,500. when healthy, at the beginning of the season, we saw this guy, he had massive upside, a ton of, rushing touchdown equity. Like, when they get down to the goal line, get down to the red zone, they are letting Cam run it in. They're not handing it off to Sony Michel. They're not handing it off to Rex Burkhead. They were letting Cam punch it in. Will that be the case now? I would assume I would assume so. I would assume they just continue to, get him heavily involved in the red zone. Obviously, in games where they're playing from ahead, Cam, his upside is not as high when they're playing from ahead because they just don't throw the ball as much. We saw, though, in week 2 against Seattle when they were playing from behind, Cam threw the ball 44 times, had a massive game, 38 DraftKings points. I don't think this is going to be a spot where they're playing from behind. I mean, this Denver team is pretty bad. I'm pretty sure the Patriots are massive home favorites right now. They're favored by 10 points at home, so I guess that's somewhat of a concern. But still, Cam just has so much upside. His rushing touchdown upside is just through the roof. He could get multiple rushing touchdowns any week. I like him a lot at 6,500. Looking at the guys priced around him, like Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, even Gardner Minshew, I would definitely prefer Cam, over all those guys. I think Matthew Stafford is pretty interesting for $200 less than Cam. Stafford, I think, is actually going to be one of the more popular quarterbacks this week, but for good reason. It's a really good matchup against Jacksonville. Jacksonville, their defense, obviously not one we should be too concerned about. When Stafford has Kenny Golladay with him, he's just so much better, and that's kind of been the case the last 2 weeks. We've seen better games from him since Kenny Golladay returned. Only threw for 206 yards last week, but did have 3 touchdowns. This is just a guy that gives you, 300 yards, multiple touchdown upside pretty much any week. This game right now is projected to be one of the highest scoring games on the slate, on the main slate at least. It has a 54 total. It opened at 52.5, and since then it's been bet up to 54. Lions are favored by 3. I mean, this game really has all the makings to be a shootout. High total, close spread, really just what we're looking for when we're trying to target, games, or we're looking for games to stack. I definitely have interest in Stafford. I think, stacking him up with Kenny Golladay does make a lot of sense. I think Kenny Golladay is a little bit too cheap this week. I do like Stafford at 6,300. Him and Cam are probably my favorite options in the 6K range. I don't mind a guy like Kirk Cousins because he gets a great spot as well against the Falcons. I think Kirk Cousins is eventually going to put up a big game. He's not going to continue to be as bad as he has been. I know this is a Vikings team that wants to run the ball as much as possible, but there is a very good chance that Dalvin Cook is going to be out this week. All signs are pointing to him being out this week. So maybe the Vikings lean a little bit more on the passing game with Cook out. Maybe we see Cousins throw the ball 35, 40 times. I mean, this is another game that has a very high total, is very likely to shoot out. This Falcons defense is one we should not be worried about at all. It's a really good matchup for Kirk Cousins. I do have interest in him at 6,100, more of a tournament play. I don't think I would use Kirk Cousins in cash. More of a tournament play, but if people I think Adam Thielen's going to be pretty popular this week, but I don't know how many people are going to be stacking up Cousins and Thielen. I don't think Cousins is going to get much ownership at all, just because of how bad he's been. So I do have interest in him in tournaments, especially if you are stacking that game. You can stack up Cousins and Thielen and then run it back with Calvin Ridley, or you could run it back with maybe Todd Gurley. Probably for me, though, I'd look to target Ridley. I do like Cousins, though, at 6,100. And then under 6K, if we're talking about value plays, I think there is a clear value, at least for me this week. Ryan Fitzpatrick at home against the Jets for 5,900. I just think looks like one of the better values on the slate. He was really, really bad week 1 against the Patriots. 8 DraftKings points, just did not have a good game at all. But since that matchup and since that game, he has bounced back in a big way. 3 straight games over 25 DK points, even in some tough matchups like against Buffalo, had 27, against the 49ers in his last outing, had 30 DK points. Fitzpatrick is a guy that I like playing him for DFS. I think he does give us upside. He has rushing ability as well. We've seen games where he can get you 40, 50 rushing yards. He can get you a rushing touchdown. There's really just no reason he should be priced at 5,900, in my opinion, especially when you look at the matchup. I mean, the Jets, not a team we're going to be too worried about. I know the Dolphins are big favorites here, but I still think Fitzpatrick is going to throw the ball plenty. Even in a game where they won by, 26 points last week against the 49ers, Fitzpatrick still had 350 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. He has massive upside. He's shown that. He's shown he can be very consistent. And the price tag is what really draws me in at 5,900. If Fitzpatrick was 6,500, I think it'd be a little bit of a different story. But when he's 5,900 and guys I know Teddy Bridgewater's been good, but I don't think Bridgewater should be more expensive than Fitzpatrick this week. Even Kirk Cousins, although it's a really good matchup for Cousins, with how bad he's been, I don't think he should be more expensive than Fitzpatrick. So definitely like Ryan Fitzpatrick at just 5,900 on DK. I think he looks like one of the better values under 6K. Really isn't much value under 6K this week. He's the one guy that stands out. I think Ryan Tannehill you could look to at 5,900, but I feel slightly better about Fitzpatrick. I think Fitzpatrick just gives you a little bit of a higher floor, probably gives you a higher ceiling as well. But I think we covered everything. At quarterback at least, the guys that I have the most interest in this week. So let's go ahead and move on to running back. So at running back at the top, you can see, Christian McCaffrey not expected to play this week. It looks like he's going to be out one more week. And then Dalvin Cook, he's listed as questionable. As of the time I'm recording this on Friday, he did not practice Thursday. He did not practice on Wednesday. We don't have Friday practice reports yet at the time I'm recording this video. But assuming Cook, he's probably not going to practice Friday. I'm assuming that he's going to be out this week. All signs are pointing to him being out. So our most expensive running back is most likely going to be Aaron Jones, 7,600 against the Bucs. Aaron Jones is a guy I really never mind playing just because he's so good. He's just so involved. He's so efficient. He's a guy that even in tough matchups can go out there and give you 25, close to 30 DK points. Has a ton of touchdown equity. Like when they get down to the goal line, they're going to be punching it in with Aaron Jones. Like even though he doesn't get massive volume, he's still locked in for about 20 touches a week. They're definitely going to involve Jamal Williams, but I do have interest in Aaron Jones. The matchup isn't great. Tampa Bay has always been really good against the run. They've been pretty stout against the run so far this season. Their defense in general has just really improved. They were really bad against the pass last year, but they've been improving on that end as well. I don't mind Aaron Jones, but I think I'd rather go save a little bit of salary, play some of the other guys we have. Like there's some guys in really good spots, like Derrick Henry at home against the Texans. That's a really good spot. Houston's been pretty bad against the run so far this season, and Henry's only 7,300. I thought his price was a little bit too low. Derrick Henry's never a guy I love paying up for just because he doesn't give us, that receiving upside. Like rarely is Derrick Henry going to get you 4 or 5 receptions. Like at most you're going to get maybe 2 to 3 targets for him, maybe 1 to 2 catches. Whereas, guys like Aaron Jones can catch 7, 8 balls. Alexander Madison, we're going to talk about, like he has a ton of upside in the passing game. Even James Conner, Mike Davis, like these are guys that can just give you, their floor is just so much higher than Henry's because of, how much they're involved in the passing game. So for that reason, I think I'm honestly going to prefer a guy like Alexander Madison over Derrick Henry. Maybe that's a bad take, but I think Madison can easily outscore Henry. And with him being priced up so much to 7,200, I don't know how popular he's going to be this week. But with Dalvin Cook, most likely going to be out, Alexander Madison is going to be locked in for a massive workload. We saw that in Week 5 against Seattle on Sunday night. Whenever Cook went down, like Madison just got fed the ball, 20 carries, 112 yards. He was involved in the passing game, 3 catches, 24 yards. Like this is a guy that has shown a ton of upside. He's a very efficient runner. When he gets the opportunity to play, like he can be really good for fantasy, and he should have all the opportunity in the world this week. No Dalvin Cook. Fantastic matchup against the Falcons. High total game, likely to stay close. Really just all the boxes are checked. I wish Madison was a little bit cheaper, but even at 7,200, like I think there's a legit possibility he could finish as a top 5 running back this week. Even he could probably be the highest scoring running back this week. He just has so much upside. They're going to run the ball a ton. Even with Cook out, I still expect Madison to get probably 15, 18 carries, probably get 4 to 5 targets, like 20 touches. Is easily in his range of outcomes. When they get down to the goal line, I expect Madison to be punching it in. I'm pretty much expecting Madison to play Dalvin Cook's role, which was, 15 to 20 carries, 5 to 6 targets, all the goal line work. Like I'm expecting that's what we're going to get from Madison this week. I like him a lot against the Falcons. I think the matchup is pristine. All the boxes are checked. Even with the price up, I still have a ton of interest in Madison. I think he can outscore a lot of the guys priced around him. So he's one of my favorite plays this week. And, I talked about it on Yahoo. I don't know what Yahoo's doing here, but they left Alexander Madison at $14. If you don't play Madison on Yahoo, like you're probably just stupid. You should probably quit playing DFS in general. I know he's going to be like 80% owned, but me personally, if I was playing like 100 lineups, I would probably just play Madison in every single one on Yahoo. There's no way that I get away from him at $14. He's a stone lock over there. Lock it in. Don't really get too cute. Or I don't want to get too cute over there. You're just playing Madison in as many lineups as you can. There's really no one priced around him that could even come close to outscoring him, at least in my opinion. So, love Madison on both sides. One of my favorite pay-up options at running back this week. And, there's other guys in that price range you could look to. Like Mike Davis, I still have a lot of interest in. Mike Davis has just been so good since Christian McCaffrey went down. Last 3 games without McCaffrey, 23, 22, and 29 Draftkings points, getting, he's pretty much playing Christian McCaffrey's role. He's getting 15, 16, 17 carries a game, getting a ton of work in the passing game, 8 to 10 targets. Got 10 targets last week, 9 targets week 3 against the Chargers. I mean, Davis just has a ton of upside, even against the Bears, not the most ideal spot, but I think Davis still gives us plenty of upside. I like him quite a bit at 7K. Yahoo's where he really looks good. They still have yet to, really kind of price him up to where he should be. He's all the way down here at $23. He's cheaper than Mostert in that Sunday night game. He's cheaper than like Connor, Taylor. He's cheaper than Todd Gurley. Definitely give me Mike Davis on Yahoo at $23. Even though it's not a PPR side over there, I still think Mike Davis gives us plenty of upside. Gonna catch, 6, 7 balls, gets all the goal line work, has a high touchdown, or his touchdown equity is really, really high, because if they get down to the goal line, they're going to be punching it in with Mike Davis. He's playing a ton of snaps, just getting all the usage. Love Mike Davis once again. I think, Yahoo at $23, he looks really good. Even on DraftKings at 7K, I still have a good amount of interest in him at that price. And then in the 6K range, multiple guys here I have interest in. I think James Robinson against Detroit looks really good. I mean, James Robinson, since he took over the starting role at the beginning of the season, he's been really good for fantasy, especially, weeks 2 and 3 against the Titans and against the Dolphins, 24, 30 DK points. He's been kind of disappointing the last 2 weeks in really good matchups. He had a really good matchup against the Bengals, just 14 DK points. Had a really good matchup against Houston, just 11 DK points. Maybe that'll shy some people away, but I like James Robinson once again. It's a really good spot, again, against the Lions. The Lions have been one of the worst teams against the run so far this season. Pretty sure they've allowed the most rushing yards in the league so far, just over 170 rushing yards per game. Really good spot for James Robinson. Another guy that gets really good usage in the passing game. Anywhere from 5 to 6 targets is pretty much his floor. If they're playing from behind, they'll give him 7, 8, 9 targets. He's still going to get, 10 to 12, 13 carries, maybe even more, depending on how game script sets up. And if they get down to the goal line, James Robinson is going to be the guy punching it in. So I like him a lot at 6,800. I think he's probably one of my favorite plays in the 6K range. Jonathan Taylor, I do have interest in as well against the Bengals. Taylor's another guy that's kind of been bad as of late, but gets a pristine spot here at home against a bad Bengals defense, a Bengals team that has always really struggled to stop the run. Taylor, he's not getting massive usage. We saw him get 28 touches in week 2 against the Vikings whenever, that was his first game starting with Mac out. And then since then, his workload has definitely gone down, but if he's going to get 15, 16, 17 touches against this Bengals defense, that's unable to stop the run, going to get all the goal line work as well. I still like Jonathan Taylor at 6,400. Because James Robinson gets so much more usage in the passing game, I think I would probably rather get up to Robinson if I can. But Taylor, definitely in play at 6,400. And then there's one guy I want to talk about under 6K as a value. So David Montgomery, 5,800 against the Panthers. David Montgomery is never a guy that I enjoy playing. It seems like every time I play this dude, he always disappoints. But this is a great spot for him this week against the Panthers. The Panthers last season were the worst team against the run. So far this season, they've been towards the bottom of the league as well. It's just a Panthers team that is so easy to run on. And Montgomery is just locked into massive usage right now. With no Tariq Cohen, with him out for the season, they've pretty much let Montgomery just play every down. He's just playing as much as he can. He's going to be on the field for 70, 80% of the snaps, if not more. He gets good usage in the passing game as well, which is something I'm liking to see. I've liked seeing, I should say. With Cohen going out, I wasn't sure how much they were going to involve Montgomery in the passing game, but he's clearly been a guy they want to get involved in the passing game. 6 targets week 4 against the Colts, 8 targets last week against the Bucs. Even if the Bears are playing from behind, they will involve Montgomery in the passing game. He's not just going to be, scripted off the floor or off the field. Still going to get good usage both in the passing game and in the running game. He's not the most efficient runner, but a matchup against the Panthers, I would expect him to be a little bit more efficient. Probably going to average, more than 2 yards a carry. I would say, probably 4 to 5 yards per carry. Should get anywhere from 10 to 15 carries, anywhere from 5 to 6 targets. Should get all the goal line work as well. Really like David Montgomery at 5,800. Like I said, I don't like playing this guy. It seems like every time I play him, he always disappoints, but hard for me to get away from him in a matchup like this one against the Panthers. So definitely like Montgomery at 5,800 on DK. He's fine to go to on Yahoo as well. But because, Madison's so cheap over there, Mike Davis is so cheap, Montgomery's $21 on Yahoo. Probably not going to be as interested in him there because, you can save salary and play Madison. You can find a little bit and just play Davis or, Taylor or Robinson. So more of a DraftKings play. That's where I'm mostly interested in Montgomery this week. There's some other guys, under 6K that are viable, like Antonio Gibson against the Giants, Myles Gaskin against the Jets. But for me, under 6K, my favorite play is definitely, David Montgomery. People were saying, Philip Lindsay might be a play this week, but it looks like Melvin Gordon is going to be back for this game. He got a DUI, but it seems like he's going to play this week. So with Melvin Gordon, back at practice, expect to play. I really don't have any interest in Philip Lindsay. If somehow, though, Gordon were to get suspended, which I don't think is going to happen, but if he were to get suspended, then obviously Philip Lindsay would be a top value play at 4,300. He'd probably be one of the best values overall. But yeah, guys, I think we covered running back. Let's go ahead and move on to receiver. So at receiver this week, we have a lot of good options at the top. You got Devante Adams, who's expected back. You got Calvin Ridley in a great matchup against the Vikings. Adam Thielen on the other side in a great matchup against the Falcons. Even Allen Robinson and is in a really good spot against the Panthers. I really have interest in all four of these guys, but I think narrowing it down, my two favorites at the top are definitely Ridley and Thielen. I just like this Falcons-Vikings game so much. I think it's very likely to shoot out. There's so many good plays on both sides of this game. Right now, I'm assuming that Julio is going to be out again. He hasn't practiced at all this week. Like I said earlier, I'm recording this video on Friday, around Friday at noon Eastern. So we'll get practice reports soon. Assuming, Julio doesn't really get any limited fashion in or anything. I'm assuming he's going to be out once again. So I definitely have interest in Calvin Ridley. Last week with Julio out, got 10 targets, 8 catches for 136 yards, 24 DraftKings points, even in a game where he didn't find the end zone. Really just has so much upside, and, it's a fantastic matchup. This Vikings secondary is one we definitely want to pick on. It's just not the same Vikings defense that it used to be. This is definitely a team you can attack. Really good spot for Calvin Ridley. I think, looking at Yahoo's pricing, we talked about how you get good value with Madison at 14. You can kind of pay up at receiver. Definitely going to be paying up for Calvin Ridley on Yahoo. He's only $30. He's actually much cheaper than Devante Adams. He's even cheaper than Julio. He's the same price as Kenny Golladay. Really like Ridley on Yahoo at $30. Definitely going to be a guy that I do try and pay up for over there. And then Adam Thielen, I have a lot of interest in as well at 7,300. Even with this Vikings team being a pretty run-heavy team, Adam Thielen has just still been a boss for DFS, especially the last two games. Double-digit targets, 10 targets, 13 targets, 29 DraftKings points in both games. Now he gets a matchup against the Falcons, another really good spot. Is he going to get double-digit targets again? I don't know, but if this team maybe gets behind, which honestly I'm kind of hoping is the case, I hope maybe the Falcons can get out to an early lead and force this Vikings team to throw, because that just boosts Adam Thielen's ceiling so much more. When they're throwing, when Cousins throws the ball 30, 35 times, we see Thielen, get targeted double-digit times. That's going to be, or that should be the case this week, at least I hope. 9 catches, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns last week. 8 catches, 114 yards, and a touchdown in Week 4 against the Texans. Thielen is just going to be a volume monster this season. He had a really big Week 1 against Green Bay. Weeks 2 and 3 against Tennessee and the Colts, he kind of disappointed, but he's bounced back the last 2 weeks in some really good matchups, and now he gets another great matchup this week. Definitely like Adam Thielen as another strong pay-up option at the top of the receiver position. And once again, talking about Yahoo pricing, in my opinion, Thielen is just way too cheap on Yahoo. He's coming in cheaper than Chris Godwin. He's cheaper than Odell Beckham. Same price as DJ Shark and Mike Evans. Give me Adam Thielen all day over those guys. Really like Thielen on Yahoo. And, as you can see, you can just kind of play whoever you want over there. You can pay up for Lamar at captain. You can pay up for Lamar at quarterback. Still pay up for Ridley and Thielen at receiver. Because Madison is so cheap, Madison's going to allow you to play some of these other expensive running backs. You can get Mike Davis in there. You could get, James Robinson or Jonathan Taylor, some of the guys we discussed. Defense, normally I go cheap at defense, so you plug in a cheap defense and you still got plenty of salary to work with. So easily going to be able to pay up a receiver on Yahoo given the soft pricing. A little bit tougher to do so on DraftKings, but, if I am paying up, I think Ridley and Thielen are by far my favorite options above 7K. But once we get down to the 6K range, just looking here, there's a couple guys that stand out for me, more towards the bottom end. Devante Parker against the Jets. I really like this spot for Devante Parker. I think stacking him up with Ryan Fitzpatrick makes a ton of sense if you want to go that route. Parker has just been so good for DFS. Even in games where he doesn't get massive volume, he still has a ton of touchdown equity. Got only two catches for 50 yards last week, but he did find the end zone. Pretty much he's been over double-digit, besides week 1 against New England, he's been over double-digit DK points in 4 straight games. Even in some tough matchups, he's been able to produce pretty solid numbers, and now he gets to face a brutal Jets defense and a terrible Jets secondary. Love Devante Parker here. Like I said, if you want to stack him up with Fitzpatrick, I think that makes a ton of sense this week. Kenny Golladay I like a lot as well against the Jags. I think it's a really good spot for Kenny Golladay. Like, when this guy is healthy, he is one of the better receivers for DFS and for fantasy. So far through 2 games this season that he's been healthy, 6 catches, 57 yards and a touchdown, 4 catches, 62 yards and a touchdown. Now he gets a Jags secondary that is easily beatable. We talked about it earlier. If I'm playing Matthew Stafford, I think stacking him up with Kenny Golladay does make a ton of sense. Really like Golladay at 6,200. Another guy that stands out in that 6K range. And then if we're going below 6K, you could play, I think Justin Jefferson at 6K is viable for sure. But we got some guys in this 5K range I like a lot. So Terry McLaurin, 5,700 against the Giants. Probably one of my favorite plays in this 5K range. This is just a guy that I'm always interested in playing. Even with Kyle Allen at QB last week, I know Kyle Allen did get hurt in that game, and I think Alex Smith came in and replaced him. He only got targeted 7 times. It was a tougher matchup against the Rams. I'm sure he saw, Jalen Ramsey, or I'm sure Jalen Ramsey shouted him in that game. But besides that game, McLaurin's just been so good this season. 24 DK points, 12, 28. Been over double digits in 4 of his 5 games. Even in some tough matchups against Baltimore, he's been able to produce solid numbers. Now he gets a Giants secondary that I'm not too worried about. They did add James Bradberry, who is a pretty solid corner, and maybe James Bradberry will shadow McLaurin here, but even so, I think McLaurin's his volume is so secure in this offense. He is clearly the number 1 receiver for this Washington football team, or for the Washington football team. And at 5,700, I think that is a little bit too cheap, given the massive volume that McLaurin's going to get, the upside he has against this Giants team. This is a game, once again, you expect Washington to be playing from behind. This Washington team is just so bad. They're probably going to be playing from behind most weeks. I think right now they're dogs in this game. Let me check real quick, though. Yeah, they're 2.5-point dogs on the road, so not the highest total in this game. I don't have a ton of exposure overall, or I'm not going to have a ton of exposure overall, but I think playing Terry McLaurin, just as a one-off, 5,700, I could see a scenario where he puts up 25 DK points, and really nobody else in this game has a massive game, maybe besides Evan Engram on the other side. I could definitely see playing Terry McLaurin from Washington and then playing Evan Engram on the Giants side, but other than that, I don't have too much interest else in this game. I do like McLaurin, though, at 5,700. I think it's just a little bit too cheap for a matchup against, a pretty beatable Giants secondary, just in my opinion. And then priced right below him, you have A.J. Brown at 5,600. I think A.J. Brown looks really good as well this week. Another guy that when he's healthy, man, he can be incredibly good for fantasy. We saw that last Tuesday night against Buffalo, even in a less than ideal matchup. I know Buffalo was without Tre'Davious White for that game, but 7 catches, 82 yards and a touchdown for A.J. Brown. Clearly the number 1 receiver for the Titans. I'm pretty sure that Adam Humphries did get activated off the COVID list, but Corey Davis is still on the COVID list, so the volume should continue to be there for A.J. Brown. In a game that's likely to shoot out. I'm pretty sure this game does have one of the higher totals on the slate right now. It's at, let me see if I can find it. There it was. It's at 53. It opened at 55. It's been bet down to 53, but 53 is still a very high total. Should see plenty of points scored on both sides. Tennessee, I never love playing Tennessee pass catchers because, Tennessee is a team that wants to run the ball as much as possible. But we'll see. We see scenarios where they get behind. That could be the case this week. They're forced to throw a little bit more than normal. I think A.J. Brown is locked in for, 8 to 10 targets. It's a very winnable matchup for him. This Houston secondary I'm not too worried about. I definitely like A.J. Brown at 5,600. I think he's another guy that just is a little bit too cheap in that 5K range. Both him and McLaurin really stood out to me overall. Laviska Shenault, I'm going to have interest in, especially if DJ Shark misses. DJ Shark, I believe he missed practice Thursday. We'll have to keep an eye on his status. If DJ Shark is out, definitely like Laviska Shenault at 5,200. I think it looks like a pretty good play in that 5K range. And then talking about value, there's not much value that I love at receiver this week. I think Deontay Johnson, assuming he's able to play, 4,900, definitely could go there. He put up a big week 1 and a pretty big week 2 as well, and since then he hasn't really done much, but he got hurt in both those games against Houston and against Philly. He got hurt against Houston early on in the game, and then against Philly, got hurt early on in the game as well. Assuming he plays a full game and he doesn't get injured, I mean, 4,900 for Devante Johnson is pretty cheap against a beatable Cleveland secondary, a beatable Browns secondary. So have interest in Devante Johnson. I think Preston Williams, if you want to stack him up with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Preston Williams at 4,700 is for sure in play as a cheaper receiver. But really, other than that, I think we kind of covered, receiver. Talked about the guys that mainly stand out to me. So let's hit on tight end real quick just before we end the video. Talk about the plays I like most here. So normally tight end is a position I do like to go cheap at. I think that is going to be the case once again this week. Mark Andrews is someone you could always pay up for. Has a ton of touchdown equity. Like his touchdown, like if there's a tight end that I would have to bet my entire life on scores a touchdown, it's probably going to be Mark Andrews. I mean, it seems like this dude scores every week. He doesn't get massive volume. He's not a guy that's going to get 12 targets. He's not going to get, the workload that George Kittle and Travis Kelce get. But his touchdown equity is just so high. He scored last week. He scored twice against Washington. I can see a scenario where maybe he gets, 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown, gets you 18 DraftKings points, which is good for 6,500. But there's other guys that are cheaper that I think I would rather save salary on and go to, like Mike Gesicki at 5,500. If you want to stack him up with Fitzpatrick, I do like Mike Gesicki here against the Jets. TJ Hawkinson against the Jags I think is interesting. Jonnu Smith against the Texans at 5,200 you could look to as well. But once we get under 5K, I think this is where I find some value. Evan Engram, I do like at 4,900. I've played Evan Engram pretty much every week so far this season. He's a guy that I just keep playing. And, last week it looked like he was going to have a big game. He did score a touchdown last week. It was actually on an end around. And he had a touchdown taken off the board on a fake field goal. He had a 40 or 30, 40-yard touchdown taken off the board because of, I can't remember what the flag was for. It could have been a much bigger game for Evan Engram last week. 4,900 is still too cheap in my opinion for a guy that's going to play a ton of snaps, going to get good volume. It's a very good matchup against Washington. I definitely like Evan Engram at 4,900. I think overall he's probably one of my favorite tight ends. Once again this week, especially when you just factor in salary. Hayden Hurst is another guy I've played a lot this season. Hasn't really gone well, but 4,700 and a good matchup against the Vikings, a likely shootout. I think Hayden Hurst looks pretty good. Eric Ebron gets a really good matchup against the Browns, and Ebron's been pretty good so far, just as of late. Did score week 3 against Houston, getting 6 to 8 targets a week. At 4,100, if you're just looking for value at the position, I think Ebron does make plenty of sense. You could look there. Jarvis Landry might be out this week. I know Odell Beckham's been banged up as well. Austin Hooper for 3,900. It's not a good matchup against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has a really good defense, but his volume has been going up the last 2 weeks. 7 targets in week 4, 10 targets last week against the Colts. Potentially no Jarvis Landry. Odell may be a little bit banged up. I mean, 3,900 for Austin Hooper. I do have interest in him as a cheap tight end. I don't think Odell was an injury. I think it was actually an illness that he was going to be, or that he was questionable for. Yeah, it was an illness. So he tested negative for COVID, but he won't return to the team facility Friday. We'll have to keep an eye on his status. I'm assuming Odell plays, but I know Jarvis Landry is the guy we're going to need to keep an eye on. I don't think he's practiced at all this week, or he was on the field at Friday's practice. He sat out Wednesday and Thursday, so he finished the week as a limited participant. We'll have to see, if Jarvis Landry plays. If he were to be out, I would have more interest in Austin Hooper, especially because, I'm looking to go cheap at tight end. Hooper's volume's been going up. He's been trending in the right direction. Only 3,900. Definitely have interest in him as a cheaper option at the position. But, I think we kind of covered tight end, at least the guys I like the most for cheap. I definitely think it's like Eric Ebron, potentially Austin Hooper, Evan Engram, Hayden Hurst. These are the guys I'm probably going to be looking to save some salary. But yeah, guys, I think we covered it all. Quarterback through tight end, broke everything down for this week 6 slate. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I really do appreciate you watching. If you did enjoy, hit that like button before you do get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload and you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do enjoy these videos, if they really help you and you want to get more content from me, I have stuff available on Patreon. You can check that out, link down below in the description. You can see all that I have to offer on Patreon. It's obviously optional, but for those of you that are interested, it is linked down below in the description. But best of luck on this week 6 slate, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you did enjoy. I hope the video helps, and we will see you in the next one. Good luck this week, guys. Peace.